one of Ukraine's staunchest allies, Poland, has announced that it will no longer supply weapons to the country. The move comes as a diplomatic dispute over grain escalates and ahead of elections in Poland. In a televised address, Poland's Prime Minister said that we are no longer transferring weapons to Ukraine because we are now arming Poland with more modern weapons. The dispute began after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine all but closed the main Black Sea shipping lanes and forced Ukraine to find alternative overland routes. Well, that led to large quantities of grain ending up in Central Europe and scenes like this. Well, Polish farmers protesting over Ukraine grain, driving down prices locally. To protect local farmers, the European Union has temporarily banned imports of grain into 5 countries: Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Romania and Slovakia. Well, Professor Stephen Fish is a political scientist at the University of California in Berkeley, and I asked him if Poland's upcoming elections influence the ban on weapons to Ukraine.
It is, and in fact, the Law and Justice Party, the governing party, has a very large constituency among farmers and small town and rural voters more generally. But on the other hand, it's not clear that this is a very smart move on the part of the Law and Justice Party. In a sense, this really kind of shows this party's hand. We have to keep in mind the Law and Justice Party, which has been in power in Poland since 2015, has really dragged Poland back away from democracy and towards something that's really closer to the Putin model. Not nearly as far as Putin has done, but this party actually, in its ideology, in some ways is closer to Putin than it is to ordinary European liberalism. That fact has been obscured over the last year and a half as the polls have been magnificently helpful with Ukrainians. Poland has taken in 8 million Ukrainian refugees, settled 1 million of them. Imagine the UK taking in 16 million refugees. That's proportionally the same thing as what Poland has done. So the people have been magnificent in welcoming Ukrainian refugees. But what the Law and Justice government is now doing is basically placing a very petty political interest over the security interests of Poland itself, because the Ukrainians are actually guarding Polish security right now. Look, on Putin's maps of the Russian Empire, Krakow and Warsaw are part of Russia. The Ukrainians are really helping the Poles now, and vice versa. And it's a shame to see this Law and Justice Party government, which is essentially illiberal, actually engaging in this kind of antics.
And that was Professor Stephen Fish speaking to us earlier. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and President Lula da Silva of Brazil have held their first face-to-face talks to try to ease tensions. Mr. Zelensky and his allies have criticised Mr. Lula for his reluctance to criticise President Putin. Earlier, Mr. Zelensky addressed the United Nations Security Council despite Russian attempts to stop him making his speech. Our North America correspondent Neda Tawfik reports from New York.
Mr. President. With your chip, Mr. President.
Navigating his way through the United Nations, President Zelensky on Wednesday took his message right to the organization's most powerful body, the Security Council. But there was drama even before the special session could get underway, as Moscow's UN ambassador tried to stop Ukraine's president from speaking, a move that was dismissed.
There is a solution for this if you agree. You stop the war and President Zelensky will not take the floor.
When he did address heads of states and ministers, President Zelensky criticized the body for its deadlock and urged reform, including stripping members of their veto powers in cases of mass atrocities.
Зараз своєю кров'ю роблять те.
Ukrainian soldiers now are doing, at the expense of their blood, what the UN Security Council should do by its voting. They're stopping aggression and upholding the principles of the UN Charter.
As important as it was to rally international support here at the UN General Assembly, President Zelensky's trip to D.C. will be critical to ensuring aid keeps flowing from its closest ally.
During his visit, President Joe Biden plans to announce $325 million in military aid for Ukraine, but a much larger $24 billion package is tied up in a larger political fight with some Republicans overspending. And so President Zelensky will put in FaceTime with skeptical congressional leaders on the Hill in an effort to win them over.
Where's the accountability on the money we already spent? What is the plan for victory? I think that's what the American public wants to know.
With the latest counteroffensive making modest gains, Ukraine's leader cannot afford the world and certainly not the U.S. to grow weary. Neda Tawfiq, BBC News at the United Nations in New York.